Okay, before I start, there's a couple things that I could make some mistakes here. Some of you probably had families that did something, and I'm about 90%. If Bruno was still alive, it'd be 100%, but he knew everything. So we're going to start now, and I want to thank you all for coming. The Highwood Historical Side, thank you very much. They're great. If anybody's ever been over to their store at 122 North Avenue, which is just around the corner from the Silver Dollar, or now it's almost well, we all know that it's a Silver Dollar. Anyway, in that little store, they have so much memorabilia, so much stuff about everybody from the 1920s all the way on till now. So stop over there and see it. It's just fabulous. On your table is also memberships. If you want to join, it's $20 a year. It's $1.67 a month. It costs nothing. It's even less than the drinks here, which is very good. But anyway, how many people, that used to be Mike's store. How many people went to Mike's store? Raise your hand. All right, how many people stole candy from Mike? Raise your hand. Now you too, the Pinto, I know you stole. Nobody stole from Mary, but they all stole from Mike. Anyway, we'll get started now. We're going to start on Green Bay Road and head over to Sheridan, which was Waukegan Road for many years. Became Sheridan just past the Nightingale and up north. So the first place there is now Greenwood. It's been there a year or two. So we're not going to talk much about them. It's owned by Sherman Kaplan's kid and Newman. They both went to Highland Park High School in the 90s. So anyway, then let's go to the bowling alley. Mary Jane Lanes. It was Jack and Teresa Facini, and they named it after their daughter Mary Jane. They were there till the early 70s, and it was a great place to go. They served every miner on the North Shore. How many people got their first drink at the bowling alley? And then they sold it to Ray Geraci and Mark Geraci and Donnie Anavino. They turned it into the alley. When they covered the alleys, Jack went crazy. He tried to throw them out. But anyway, they had some great entertainments. They had the Glenn Miller Band played there, Corky Siegel, the Ramones, who became the most famous punk rock band, Fast Eddie, and Duke Tomato and the All-Star Frogs. They were very good. Yes, and then they sold it to Jim Freeman and Glenn Furlong. It didn't last long. Glenn Furlong was also part of the Jump in the Saddle band that wrote the Curly Shuffle back then, but it lasted about a year. Then Johnny Brandel came in with Angie, and they ran it for a long time. And they did a great job at the bowling alley. And then they sold it to a guy named Russ Armstrong. He didn't have it too long because the state of Illinois had him serve about 18 months. So. It happens. It's Highwood. Anyway, they sold it to Steve Goldstein, and he kept it as a bowling alley, shortened it to 6 lanes, and then took them all out and put in 210, which is a nice entertainment place. And they cut out the food, thanks God, because it was the worst food in the history of Highland. I'm telling the truth. Anyway, what people don't understand about Highwood, and I should have done this from the start, is that the families came over here in the 1900s, 1910s, 20s, and then they became the people that in between Lake Forest, Highland Park, and the shore, and they did all the work. They built the homes, they did everything else, and the electricians and the plumbers, and they did everything. And then all their kids went out and fought the war. They came back and they married all the girls from Highwood or Highland Park. And there was a lot of times at Highland Park also. And then my generation, they started to fade away. but they're still here. There's a lot of us that here grew up here, and we all spend our time here. And they always could say, you can take the boy out of the Highwood, but you can't take the Highwood out of the boy. So behind the bowling alley, I left this out, was a little place called Chick Chick. I don't know how many of you remember that, but it was a chicken place that had good chicken. It only lasted a couple of years, but it was run by a gentleman here, Larry Powers, and his brother Todd for many years, a couple of years. So moving up the street, we'll get to the Pasquesi building, which had Gabe's backstage, first was Pops for Champagne that came in. It was a nice place, a little expensive, too expensive for Highwood. And they were gone. And then came Gabe's backstage lounge, Gabe Graffiti had it, and he had some good music in both of in the back there. And then he sold it to the guys that have Greenwood, Valero. They didn't do very good there either. And now they're down at Greenwood. Next door. Next door, we have the granddaddy of all Highwood, the Del Rio. The Del Rio's been there for 90 years. It started with Grandma Pagatti, and went to Waddy, and now Billy has been running it for about, I don't know, he's got gray hair now. Anyway, you know, Del Rio's famous for the Veal Del Rio, and also on Christmas time, when he brings in the tenors, it's just a fabulous place to go and see. Next door, we got a place that I might know a little bit. It was originally a house for many years, and the music family was there, and then the Milanis bought it and put in Casa Milani in the late 30s. And then they sold it, and they owned this place until 1986, I believe. And then it became the pagoda. There was a fire in the pagoda, and then we brought in Dante Cervetti came in with the landmark. And then the Nightingale. A lot of people don't know the Nightingale was there from 1954 to 1969 when they moved across the street. Then came PJ's Pub for 1 year, the Mueller family. And then it became Lupo's. Bob Lupo had it in there until 77. And then a guy I knew kind of well, my brother Jack, came in with Boomers, with Donald Del Ponte, and they had a nice run for 13 years. It was a wild, crazy bar, and when they first opened it, there were lines out the door, and although Costelli was down the street, he'd come over and say, "I'm going to put you out of business." So, anyway, he survived, and then I went in there and bought it with my partner Mark Lowe, and we called it Bertucci's. And then in 1994, Bertucci's from Boston approached me and said, we don't want your location, we want to break 8 units into Chicago, and we want to pay you to get rid of your name. And I said, well, how much do you want to pay me? And he said, $25,000. And I said, I guess you're not coming then, are you? So after they gave us 10 times that amount, we changed it. So I put out there to let people know. I had 6 months to change the name. Let people know. I said, pick out the name, and if whoever gets it will get dinner for 4 months. So I got all these names, and came down to 2, and it was Papagallo's, or it was Cucina Lina, which is my mother's name, and it means Lena's Kitchen. So I wanted Lena's Kitchen so bad, and my dad, he hated that name. He says, I don't want your mother's name up there in lights. I said, why not? I said, she makes the tortellacci. I said, why not, Dad? And we kept arguing for days. Finally, I said, you know, it's my restaurant, Dad. And he looked at me and says, okay, kid, but the day that name goes up in lights, you're out of the will. So I took the will. And we became Papagallo's until 2000. And then they went out of business in Illinois. We took the name back Bertucci's till 2013. And now it's 31 apartments. Anyway, there's one little history of that building I should tell you about. Everybody thinks, because you saw the movie, that Alexander with Don Amici, that Alexander Graham Bell discovered the phone. He did not. There was a guy from Highland Park, and I'm blanking on his name.
Gray.
Elijah Gray. It was Elijah Gray.
Elijah Gray. Thank you. Thank God you're here. So, Elijah Gray lived over on Prospect. He had a store on 2nd Street. Bell beat him to the patent. Elijah Gray ended up going with AT&T, and they all emerged later on. But anyway, the first long-distance phone call came from Chicago to that house where Bertucci was at. A guy named Charles Summer, the second postmaster of Highwood, and General Philip Sheridan was at his house because he was going to build later on Fort Sheridan to keep all the Lake Forest people, keep those hoodlums away from the Lake Forest people. They could go right through Highwood, but Lake Forest they couldn't stop. So anyway, they sing songs back and forth, and that's the first long-distance phone call. Anyway, so now we're going to move next door, and it was Father Stavron with Claire and Curly Birdie. She was a Fabry, and they did have another place that was up the street. We'll get into that a little later. And then after that, her daughter, Marilyn Birdie, and Chuck Wessel took over. And then they sold it to a guy that took 5 years to build a building, the Irish guy. I think he celebrated St. Patrick's Day for like every day. Anyway, Brady McKinnon went in there. They lasted 7 years. And now it's, and then Jim over there at Washington Gardens took over, and he called it Ginger's for 1 year, and now it's Sliced Pizza. We're going to move next door. And people don't realize that originally the Silver Dollar was right next door, and also right next to Fritz the Barber. And they went out, and then in came, which I thought was always the finest pizza ever in Highwood, the Sunnyland. Right? Eddie Ori, and the Piggies were in there, the Smiths, Joe Ori, and then Mom Ori says, I no cook no more. And they didn't know what to do. They sold the place. And Jimmy Sione came in and bought it for a couple of years at Sione's. And then they brought in, was bought by a guy named Bill, I'm blanking, I know his name, but it was too hard to pronounce. And his name, Bill Pup. And I have to say this about Bill, he was probably the most hated bar owner in the history of Highwood. Nobody liked Bill. So then in 1982, Alex Squinavaco, who had left Scornos back in the early 70s, went out to Colorado, opened a couple of restaurants. And the last one had folded. And Bill Bernstein called him up and said, Alex, let's open a restaurant. So Alex came in and he opened Washington Gardens that lasted until 2009. And I still think Washington Gardens now has the best thin pizza in town. Anyway, they were there in 2009, and then Jim bought it with his wife. I'm blanking on stuff. Michelle. And then they just recently sold it to Ben Glazer after 10 years in business. Now we're going to go to La Lira. La Lira, originally that boxer Terry Terracina, Enzo Ferranza, and Albert Stefani opened the original. And they were there for quite a few years. And after that came in Arnold with Arnold Troji, and I think one of the other owners is there, Cesar Pederazzi. Am I right? Thank you. And Yubi, was Yubi part of you too?
No, Yubi was before us.
He was before you.
Oh, yeah.
And then Yubi passed away young. And then came in Mario's with the girl that made those, our great cook here, Donna Barachi. Say hi, Donna. Donna made all the cooks there. I grew up in that woman. She's a great gal. Anyway, they were in there in Mario's, and I don't know, because you people don't know, a lot of people don't know what mora is. Mora is when it's an Italian game and you throw your hands out there and call a number. So downstairs at Mario's, you go into Mario's and all of a sudden you'd hear, Chico, say, They were all down there playing Mora. Not upstairs drinking, they were down there playing Mora. But anyway, they had great food there. And then they had this great singer, Aldo from Italy. Remember Aldo? Aldo was a great singer. I thought he was going to go far, so I heard him sing the Three Dog Night song, Joy to the World. And when he started off going, Jeremy is a bull, I said, that's it. Well, if you don't know what it was Jeremy is a bullfrog. Then we're going to move on next door for another Aldo's Coffee Shop that was there many, many years. And after Aldo, Sam Manfredini bought the place. And Sam was kind of a character. He was a cousin to Donna's husband, Mario. Just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, Sammy was a wild guy. And he had his parents working there, and they worked like dogs, those poor people. And Sam would sleep. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he strolled down the Boomers, and that's why he had the nickname Amaretto Sam. He would drink a bottle of Amaretto and wash it down with about 8 or 10 COs and go home. And his wife finally had enough of it and says, I'm going to divorce you. So they went to get divorced. And they're up in Waukegan with a prominent Waukegan attorney that's in this room, and I'm not going to say his name. But his initials are Steve Lenardi. But anyway, the cute little story was, the guy, they were arguing about the property over on Washington Avenue over there. And the judge says, I'm going to put a real estate sign on your home. And Sammy, and he says, I can sell your house. And Sam says, what the fuck? Judge, are we going to the real estate business together? And the judge said, Mr. Manfredini, I don't like that language. If you keep it up, I'm going to put you in jail for contempt of court. He goes, you can't do that, Judge. He says, why not? And he reached in his pocket and goes, I'm going to get out of jail free card. Who knew he played Monopoly, right? Anyway, that didn't last very long. So, anyway, next up was Ferruccio's. Ferruccio and Paolo Pirelli went in there for about a year. And then came Loretta's with Franco Lanzini and Loretta, his wife, Loretta Cecchi. And then came Blueberries with Bill Bernstein and Alex. They are nice place in there. They had a port wine burger that nobody else ever made. And then 3 Chinese restaurants came out. I could possibly tell you those names. And then the Sage Grill. And he blew $1 million in there. And then the tap house came in, so nobody's ever done very well except Aldo. So let's take a left and go down Highwood Avenue for a second. And we have 2 guys from Italy. That was Gino Polari and Sam Visconti. And they were in the old Billy's and the toy shop that was in there. And then they broke up and Sam went across the street in Little Italy. And then we go to Bernardi's at the corner, and Bernardi's was there for many years. The main thing I remember, they had a great green river. Nobody had a green river. And they also charged 2 cents for those little packets of ketchup if you wanted with your no one of the retired millionaires. But then Bernardi's, when Sharoni's burned down, I think it was 78, it took Fabri's with it, it took the vitamin shop, and it took Bernardi's with it. And that big fire there. Now we'll go up to a couple of past the old Mike's Barber Shop, and we got Scabby's Sportsman's Bar, was before a lot of our times. And then Nando Latarini was in there. And then the original Ziggy's was in.
Oh, really?
Then you got Hunter's Lounge, which was there for many years with Slim Hunter. Then his wife Karen took over, and then she put each of the three boys in there. None of it worked. And they sold it to Wilma Santee Wow, and after a while she changed it to Santee's Garden. And then we go to one of the all-time famous bars in Highwood, the Silver Dollar. With Art Frolini, his partner Johnny Dai Natale. And when he got out, then Bobby Palmieri took over, was there over 50-some years, ran a great bar. And then our son Kevin Frolini came in there. And then now it's the Humble's Pub. We go across the street, past the gas station that used to be Flip Maestries, where everybody used to go and sit around. Flip was a scout for the Pirates also. Anyway, then we had Russell's Huddle. Tommy Russell was there for quite a while. He also ran all the gambling. And speaking of gambling, my dad called me up one day and says, "Come over here, I got a list I want you to add to." He goes, "How many bookies do you know of?" So I put all mine down. We had them up 52 bookies in a town of 5,000. How do they all make a living? There's one of them still here. I'm not going to get his name out. He'll kill me. Or he'll make food. I haven't figured that out. Anyway, at the Russell Huddle came Alan James, the pair of Tonys, and her son Danny. I want to say something about Al. Al was a rough, gruff guy, but he hated Budweiser. Hated Budweiser. One day in 1968, a guy came in and said, "Here's two from Budweiser." He goes, "Here's 2 tickets to the Tiger Cardinal series in St. Louis for you, Al." He said, "Okay." He said, the guy was sleeping at the bar. He goes, "Wake up, here's 2 tickets to the game." He hated Budweiser. So anyway, Al went down to Springfield. He would fight for the rights of the bars in Highwood. He fought with Fidel all the time. We had an association back then. And Al and Fidel would go, they were buddies, they went at it all the time. He did a lot of great things for the bars in Highwood, so kudos to Al. And he also had a place out called the Sky Ranch out in Montana or Wyoming or someplace, and he would send kids there to cure them, and he was great with that. So he's gone now, but I was very impressed of how dedicated he was. Moving on forward, we have the Highwood Rec Center, which I'm going to mention just for a second, because it's the Don Scraner Center, the guy who put Highwood on the map. I mean, he took us little guys and he made us into stars, took us to Puerto Rico. That's another story. But anyway, at the center back in 1980, a lot of you might remember, but Pavarotti came in 80, and our own Josephine Campani sang with him, and Gloria Linari. So that was very nice. And then he walked across the street to here. Am I correct? Yes. Then we go down and go up to Red Fiocchi Saratoga, which was a great restaurant that he had up there for a long time. After that came Regal Court. Not very good. Then the bistro with Don Yamaguchi came from Carlos over there. And he didn't last too long. He had great food, but it wasn't for Highwood. And then Kristen came in with the Alouette, and the Alouette was a long time. And then when he went to sell the place, it took 6 years, and people would come and say, "I want to buy the place." He goes, "What are you going to do?" He goes, "Nope, you're going to go out of business. Forget it, I'm not selling it to you." So he never got anybody to buy it. Now it's a parking lot. But he owned it while Jimmy Starhouse was there, and then the Greek place, Yanni, opened. So now it's an unstriped parking lot that should be striped.
We need it. Just recently.
Oh, never mind. Anyway, we go up to the great place, the Washington Gardens. The other Washington Garden still has the pizza that Mama Scornavaco started 80 years ago. And then they changed the name, Mondo and Tony changed the name to the Scornavacos. And they took in Alex and Mike as partners, and Alex built the courtyard out there, first outdoor patio in the area. And they did fabulous. Then they had a little fight, and Alex went to Colorado. And Mike kept the place, and he changed the outside to Jose O'Brien's. And then Mondo got sick, and then they sold the place in like 1989, I believe. A guy named Lucas came in from the Lucas family that owns Cubby Bear and a bunch of places and all those houses behind Wrigley. He kept the name for a year.
Wait, you forgot to say something. That was the first one, and your cousin had us walk there.
What cousin?
Your favorite cousin.
You? Were you drinking?
Were you drinking?
And what'd you do there? My Aunt Rena worked there. She was the last person to work at Scornavaco's, and then she showed up the next day. She thought they were kidding.
Laurenti's
Don't play games.
grocery store.
Let me keep going here. Anyway, Lucas got rid of it. He changed the name, I don't remember that. But anyway, Cipriani's came in, a little Italian guy, and he had mob money behind him, and he didn't pay the mob money, and they broke his legs. Then a rib joint came in from Libertyville, lasted a year. Then Teddy Kazmaier brought in Tuscany, and it was doing okay. And my first chef, Jeff Stearns, took the computer and the staff out one night, and that kind of ruined that. And then Johnny V's came in, Joe Greco, and they did a good job for about 3-4 years, and he was gone. And then Victoria Banquets came in, and the place burned down. So now it's an empty lot, unfortunately. Okay, let's go back to Waukegan Road. Now, Waukegan Road and Sheridan Road, you go to the corner of the stop sign, then it becomes Sheridan Road. It was Waukegan. We'll start with Gop Santee. Gop and Betty at Santee's. Gop was a funny guy. He cooked from 11 to 1:30. If you tried to order at 1:31, you couldn't get a hamburger. He had great burgers, and he also had the sausage and the sausage delight. Everybody loved it over there. And he also had these Jim Beam mementos, and he had everyone ever made sitting on top of his place. And he also would come by, and if he didn't know you, a new person, he had the bottle of mustard, and he would come over and squirt it at you, and the string would come out. Then he sold it to John Moran, who turned it into Moran's. Then, next door to him was the famous Wooly Bowley. Wooly was kind of an independent guy. No credit cards. If you didn't like it, he made you sit there for an hour. Or as when I had a date one day, he came back and I wanted to order dessert, and the waitress said, "You can't order dessert." Willie said so. I said, "I'm on a date here." So Willie came over and he says, "I need a table, Bertucci, get out." And that was Willie. Or he'd come back and he'd stand behind you and say, "I'll get you the table as soon as these people leave." And then for lunch, he had two things. He had a little steak and a side of totolaches or mustacholi, and that was it. If you don't like it, don't eat it. And he never had a sign. Okay, across the street was a neat place. Nothing special, but the way it was, the city line of Highwood goes on an angle. And it went right through Babe's Haven's restaurant. So you bought your beer in Highwood, you went and peed in Highland Park. It cut through. Okay, and then I want to talk about a Highland Park place that was there for almost 35 years. It was Carlos. It was very well run by Carlos and Debbie Nieto. And even though they were in the old Blaze market, and he ran a great place for years. Next door you have Miramar, run by Gabriel Vitti. That's all I'm saying.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Next door you had Fontana di Trevi with Mario and Mary Galletti. Mario made great food. Marion kind of overcharged on the bill. It was a nice place. He's a really wonderful guy. And then you have Curly's, my place. Curly's was there almost since the 40s. Then it became Chet Weber's Wood Nickel. And then Dieter Lenz and Peter Glenn had the nickel. J.V. Johnson had the nickel. And Howard Hughes had the nickel. A lot of people had them. And now Tommy Garrity is in there with the very successful Toadstool. So now we're going to go to a place called Coco's Tower Casino, run by Coco Parentoni. He was right next door to the Nickel. And then two wonderful guys came in there, Gus Cervetti and Roman Turchi, who ran Gus Romans for a long time. And then in 1973, they wanted to sell the place. So a friend of mine, Steve Lenardi, and I talked to our fathers about going to buying the place. And my father went to Mondo and Bob Torelli, and Gus wanted 65,000 back then, a lot of money. And they says, Mondo and Bobby says, give him 25,000. So we didn't buy it. Anyway, Greg Bowden and David Schneider went in there and bought it.
Yeah.
And I would, by the way, I have a trivia question. The last bartender to work for Gus and Romans was me. And November 30th of 73. And then Bowden and Schneider bought it, and then a month later they exchanged to 19, and they made tons of money. It just went crazy. Then David bought Greg out, and then David sold it to a guy named Mike Marshall, who went to jail for wire fraud. And then Water Tower. Then Gus and Romans came back for about a year, and the magic was gone. And then the Water Tower was bought by, turned into Nancy Johnson and Larry Trachaitis. And Nancy had it until the end. Next door was a Sheridan Lunch with an Alexander's Cafe. Caesar Bernardi and his wife ran that, and then David Petarelli had Alexander's Cafe. Next door was Trace Hermanas, that was there for 28 years. Wonderful guy. And now Marcos is there, Marcos Santis, doing a good job. Across the street, let's go to Mr. Duffy's. It was upstairs, it was run by Duffy, Lelly, and Chubby Cremo. Next door was Bees. Bees had great chicken.
He is great.
Bee was great. Then we have the 400 Club, owned by Charlie Dinelli.
400.
Now, the 400 Club, Thursday night was Maze Night Out. So all the maids would come to the 400 Club. Well, the Highwood boys didn't like that. So Norm Jambi and another guy dressed up as policemen, and all the black guys from Fort Sheridan, North Chicago, and Waukegan would come there. And they didn't like it, so they dressed up as policemen, and they rousted them. And then they found out that they weren't cops. So they came down on a Tuesday night in 1961, and they had a fight right on Sheridan, Waukegan Road over here, and it lasted for a couple hours. The Highwood police was only 1 or 2 on at the nighttime. They couldn't handle it. So they called in the fire department. The fire department came over and hooked it up and started to spray everybody, but there was no water in the hydrant. So they had to bring in cops from all over the place and all over the towns. And I was told by Roger Nardi, he said, I've never been hit so hard in my life. He said, the Highwood boys lost that one. Okay, then the 400 Club became the Nightingale. So Gene Fiocchi and Duffy. And they went on for years, and now Marvin's was there for a long time, wonderful guy. And now his son Kyle runs it. So they've been there 50 years in this location, 69 overall. Next door, you got two guys from Italy. Gino built the place over there. And upstairs for a while, he had a bar called High Five that Dennis Platt owned. And now it's an Indian place called the Curie Hut, which I have to say I've never been to. And then his daughter's got a real cute place downstairs with great food called Maria's. Then we go across the street, and back in the 50s it was called the Rainbow. And it was owned originally by my Uncle Al Bertucci and my Uncle Ollie Zanarelli. Well, Uncle Ollie drank the profits, and Al went back to hold down the work. My grandfather. Ollie went back to Fort Sheridan and became an electrician. And then Terry Terracina came in and bought his first place. Terry was a professional boxer back then. And then in the 60s, Billy Courts bought it and turned it into Shrimp Walk, which they had the all-time greatest French onion soup in the history of French onion soup for years. And then Larry Hannula took over with Tommy Mazzetta was his silent partner, and they ran it for many years. And Larry got the tremendous idea, I'm going to move the Shrimp Walk to Highland Park. Well, that lasted 6 months. So he put Brian Heffernan in there, who used to be the chef at Washington Gardens, and he turned it into Aussie and ruined the French onion soup. And then Brian was there. Brian, a great cook, but he had problems with the landlord, and he moved over to Lakeview. And Fidel had a place over there next door to where he lived on Lakeview. And after he lost the election in '93, he wanted to put a chicken place in there with Vince Donofrio to run it. So Vince quit his job at the bank. Smart move. And Fidel in the city have an argument about the windows, so he says, I ain't opening. Fortunately, Vince found a job at another bank. But anyway, it stayed empty for about 7-8 years, and then Brian moved over the Shrimp Walk from there. And then when he went out of business, Howard Hughes lost his lease over at the Wooden Nickel. Now he has the Wooden Nickel over there on Lakeview. Okay. And after the Shrimp Walk, there was 3 more Chinese places, I don't know the name. And now Cluckers. Next door we have a great place for many years. Virginia Minicucci had her place in there. And tremendous sausage sandwich. And then her longtime waitress Sandy bought it, changed the name to Sandy's. She passed away, and her daughter Darcy is running it. And they still got the great Highwood burger in that place. Across the street, a long time ago, there was a place called Ono's. Irving Ono from Skokie owned it, and he had his top cook, Vic Fontana, making the French fries. Now he went up in the world, he's married to somebody in this room. He didn't go to VIP and do a great job over there, VIP card. And then also, next door was the Silver Grill that was there for many, many, many years. And then it became the infamous Hoagie Hut. It was open until 4 or 5 in the morning. A lot of guys slept in their eggs at that place. And if you wanted a hamburger or hoagie, you had to go behind the bar and behind the counter and whisper it to Vic. After Vic came in, Hecky's Ribs was a very popular place down in Evanston. Not popular in Highwood. When Henry left, he put a sign in his window that said, "You people don't know good food." I'm not making that up. And then Donnie Iovino and Albert Ferrara came in there and didn't last long because there was a fire. Across the street was Gert's Midway Inn, run by Gert Ranzani for many years. After she was ready to go, Harry Oppenheimer, John Weineman, a bunch of Lakeshore guys decided they wanted to own a bar. So they bought it and they put this guy Murph in it. Murph was a former state trooper, married to a beautiful woman. And Murph didn't do well, and they decided to fire Murph. And Murph tore out all the plumbing and all the stuff, and he was gone. And then came in the Great Potato Famine, the second best name in Highwood, owned by Frank Bomani. Lasted a few years, and then was the last resting place of Ziggy's. And Fidel closed them down. Across the street, we have the Bella Vista. It had a lot of owners. I can go back and tell you Nell Bernardi and her husband was there. Tony Galangi was there. And that was owned by Fidel Guinea and Dino Payai. And then they had a place called the Roaring Twenties was in there. And they had a lot of good music. They had the Platters, a bunch of good groups in there. And we go back across the street. And then we had the Hawaiian Hut. And Ziggy's Golden Dome followed him. Ziggy moved a lot of places. And I had my first underage drink with Dennis Rafferty over here. I was 17 years old, drinking those Dime Blasts. It was great. And after Ziggy went, Buffos came in there with Lenny. He's been there 42 years, I believe. And he had a partner, Albert Ferrara, and they had a fire. There's something strange about it? Anyway, Lenny bought Albert out after that. Lenny's been there serving Highwood, doing a fabulous job. He was part of the Highwood, Chamber of Commerce for years, and wonderful guys, my name. Then we move across the street to a place I knew well called the Hideout. It was owned by Vic Benvenuti and Marge and Marion Smyers originally. And Marge was a wonderful lady. Marion was as weird as it comes. Marion, if the place was too busy, he'd lock the door. He'd also sit and stare out the window when he had no business. Then it was bought by Roger and Steve Lenardi, Earl Reynolds, and Billy Foster in November of 1976. And when Billy wanted to leave in June of 77, they took this little Italian boy with curly hair, got his start in the bar business. So in 1971, I bought out the rest of them, and I took Dennis Rafferty, my lifelong friend, as a partner, and we called it Rainbows, after Dennis's nickname, Rainbow. And we were there till 2000. And it was kind of a wild bar. We built that patio in '83, and it was just a wild jumping place till about '94 when the new mayor came in and killed all the fun in Highwood. Him and his henchman was not very nice people. And when you ask anybody Rainbows, they'll say the turtle races. We had those turtle races running for 9 years until a guy from the health department goes, "You can't have turtles." And then I said, "We got turtle soup." They didn't believe us. That was kind of the end of the turtle race. So next door, going across the alley, we had Sylvia Pasquesi had a place called Sylvia's, who was the aunt to those two little Burton girls over there. And then her mom took over as Josie's, and then Nell's came in, Nell Bernardi. And then we moved next door, the Panther Lounge, with friendly Frank Burton owned it. And Frank was there for a long time. One thing he did is when they had all that Black Panther stuff going on, he took the Panther off the outside of the building. And then he took Billy Bernstein as his partner, and they were together for quite a while. They changed the name to Gaslight Lounge when they started doing music. And after that, Phil Stamison joined Bill, and Frank got out. And Phil gave up a hell of a job selling advertising for ABC because I always wanted to own a bar. So he had a great idea. He said, we're going to sell $5 all day on Tuesdays. Okay, Phil. And Sam Manfredini, Corrado, and Zini walked in there at noon and left at 1 in the morning. That was the end of that. Not every idea works. And then Vic Kazmaier opened Fisherman's Wharf. That was a kind of a disaster. Then across the street, we have the original Big Z. They were trying to copy, not McDonald's, Burger King, and they had, it was owned by Dick Zacharias, and then they opened one in Highland Park. It was there quite a while. And then the Greeks came in with the Seaway restaurant, which they had a lot of business after hours because that's who can enjoy that food because you're so drunk you didn't know what you ate. Across the street, in the Carousel Linen Building, Donnie Iovino opened Big Eye Pilum High, which was okay for a while, except his father used to be there, and his father had been in the I shouldn't go into this, but Neil yelled at all the customers. It was worse than that, but I'm not gonna. Then you had next door was Club 7, P.G. Giuliani and Angelo Ziccarelli, and then Dave's Haven was there. He moved down because I guess the place moved closer to Highland Park. And then Peter Fitzgerald right here came in there with Fitz's Pub. And he sold it to Jack and Peter Glenn. And then Jack and Glenn, I called him. I said, you remember who you sold it to? He says, I only know you from Deerfield, and he paid cash. And his money smelled like marijuana. And then Mike Garrity and Frank Bomani opened Shaughnessy's. I think Mike got out because that was like a nice place, wasn't it? Yeah. Next door, Chubby Cremo opened a place, had a great pizza. And unfortunately, there was an undercover guy sitting at the bar. He thought it was broke, and he kept giving him money and paying for his drink. And they ended up closing him for gambling. Great pizza. And the place became the VFW. Across the street was the Tally Hole. Talk about a wild joint in the late 50s and 60s. And that was it. It was owned by Bob Torelli and Tony Scornavaco. They had a couple fights there, like one a night, two a night. They had some great entertainment. They had Mike Bloomfield, they had Muddy Waters, they had the Hollywood Argyles, and the Elvis Presley of the North Shore, Hayden Thompson. And I forgot to tell you, at the Panther Lounge, they had a guy named Robert Conrad, right? He played at the piano at the Panther. And he went on the great thing. Next door or not next door, but after the Tally Ho, came the Stag and Doe, owned by Jerry and Gloria Estabrook, what I think was the best name ever in Highwood. It meant, come stag, bring doe. And then they got divorced, and Gloria went across the street and opened a flamingo. We get over down to the corner, and the Queedy Beady was there, owned by Mitchie Andrini before he took off to Vegas. Heading north, we'll go up to the Ramada Inn. That became the Hotel Moraine. Billy Pagatti and his associates made it into a beautiful place. They had a wonderful brunch there, if you remember. And after they sold it to a guy named Branko from Yugoslavia, and it's now going to be a old people's home. They're opening. I don't know if anybody's going to go there, but they're opening. And you go up to the two shopping centers up there, and you've got Pluckers was there, and then there is now Lovell's is there. Lovell, he was his father was the great astronaut, and he cooked over at Lovell's for years. And then we go to the next one, the last one, and we've got Giacomo's. Giacomo kind of had a tough ending. I don't think I'm exaggerating. Giacomo to me was the most worst run restaurant with great food. I know my friend over there, Emilio, had to bartend on New Year's Eve because they didn't have a bartender. And then after that came a terrible fish place called Fish Head. And now Scotty's some really nice places in there. If you haven't tried Scotty, I would go try Scotty. And then north of that, I thought the most wonderful breakfast, tremendous sausage, great food, Cafe Petopia. Unfortunately, David got hurt, and now it's a Mexican restaurant. Let's go back down Washington. Take a little right there. There's a place called Promiscuous.
But it's Mike, not Dave. Mike got hurt.
I'm sorry, Michael Petro. And then we go down there, and there's convicts and crazy people. The next place, the beer place. And then we come to the last place here, which is the Highwood Bocce Courts. That's going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary over at Exmoor. With a dinner dance and a great singer named Tony Ocean. So, I hope you've enjoyed my little chat. It's been fun doing it, and